Tell me, my friends, have you ever heard of the law of equivalent exchange? What's up, guys? I'm Pencil here, and here we are to do a breakdown / spoiler discussion for chapter 259 of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is known as the decisive battle in the uninhabited demon-infested Kinjaku Part 31. And ladies and gentlemen, what a chapter indeed, what a chapter indeed. A chapter full of mystery, of speculation, of clarification, of explanation, and all of that I can barely rationalize because I have little to no translations. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Editing me, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do have one too. Have it on me, and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact, Uraume Sukuna. Quite the powerful creature, is he not? A creature so transcendent that even when his soul is battered to oblivion, the barrier between him and Megami Fushiguro ever wider and ever more broken than was before, he still stands proud, missing 2 arms with a heart that doesn't even exist, and a body mangled and mashed up to oblivion. The king simply could not care, for the king knows that ultimately he will win. In his own mind. But obviously there are other things to tackle in this chapter. Let's start where all good things start. The beginning. So we open up with this chapter with a conversation between the 3 blood manipulation brothers. Honestly, I will admit, I do wish we just generally got more of this dynamic. Like more of this family in particular. If there's one thing I will admit, I've been kind of radio silent on it because the Kinjaku Coper in me is still Kenny coping. But if I put down the Kinjaku copium, if I put away the tank I've been huffing consistently for the past while now, there's one disappointment I have with Kenny being beat by Takaba and Yuta. It's that those characters had little to no connection with Kenny. Like basically, here's the thing. Yuta didn't necessarily have connection to Kinjaku, he had connection to Geto. Those 2 characters are far too fundamentally different. They have loose interests and they like sorcery. That's about it. So Yuta didn't really have any ties to Kinjaku. Like, we associated Yuta with Kinjaku because of Kinjaku talking smack about Yuta and Yuta himself wanting to execute Kinjaku, so Gojo didn't have to go through that again. But like, narratively, in universe, there was no character dynamics between the 2. While Takaba and Kinjaku ended up developing a very, 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 very interesting dynamic, at least in my opinion. The idea of the ancient sorcerer who never knew nothing he couldn't control, and the man who was born in the modern day with the inability to properly enjoy and live through his passion. While I do love their dynamic, ultimately that was the dynamic that had to be born, built, and created on the spot. Kinjaku did have existing dynamics, whether they be direct familial dynamics in the case of Yuji and or actual legitimate animosity and hatred that goes on a dualistic street between him and Choso. And unfortunately, Choso just never really got to get that closure. Like, notably, I'm trying to think, does Choso even acknowledge the idea that Kenny's cooked? I don't think so. Because, ironically enough, and here's the thing, I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, Pencil Man, what did you expect? Kenny was nothing but a side villain anyway. And you're right. But here's the thing, right? Kenny's kind of treated like a footnote, which is insane considering he's literally the author of JJK. Like beyond that shit, like there's no, like, I say, in terms of character importance, you cannot write the story without Toji Fushiguro. He's too important despite appearing for like 1% of the manga. You cannot write the story without Gojo Satoru. The whole back half of the plot is built around sealing him, and the whole front half of the plot is built around unsealing him, only for him to get God anyway. But still, you cannot write the story without Satoru Gojo. You cannot write the story without Uraume and Sukuna. We wouldn't have a major antagonist to be fighting right now. And obviously, you cannot write the story of JJK without Kinjaku. He's literally the reason Sukuna even exists as fingers. He's the reason the Culling Game happened. He's the reason Choso happened. He's the reason Yuji happened. He's the reason the entire Jujutsu world is structured in the way it is with its specific biases. Kinjaku is responsible for all of that. And no one really acknowledges the fact that he got annihilated. Like, outside of the merging and transfer over to Sukuna, Kenny's kind of just up in the air. And well, that's fine in a general sense. Once again, I do agree. Now, at this point, I'm once again putting my copium aside. Kenny wasn't the main villain. So ultimately, he would be treated like a footnote when we have such a bigger, badder, crazier main villain to focus on in Sukuna. But I think that almost blasé deletion of Kinjaku from the narrative leads to this whole family dynamic sort of not necessarily getting closure. And in a way, I get why Choso had to go in the way he did. Because, like, he cares about Yuji. Sukuna's pretty much irrelevant. You kind of have the same issue. Funnily enough, you have the same issue with Choso and Sukuna that you had with Yuta and Kinjaku, where the characters have basically no relation. Don't get me wrong, Yuta, because of how Yuta's structured, he has no relation to any of the major antagonists. Not a single one. Like, he doesn't necessarily care too much about Kenny. He just want to get rid of Kenny to help Satoru Gojo, which is entirely separate from him. He could not care less about Uraume. I highly doubt he even knows their name. And Ryoma and Sukuna is just another guy from the punch. Yuta's very disconnected from the narrative. But at least Choso did have a connection. He did have that entire battle. He probably would have liked to have been part of that get back in order to avenge Yuki and stuff like that. But it doesn't get to happen. Noritoshi Kamo, the man named for Kinjaku in a sense. If not in a sense, quite literally. Kinjaku was the evilest sorcerer in history, and Kamo ended up inheriting that name. What does he think about the loss and fall of Kinjaku, or the possibility of the end of the origin of his real name? Nothing. Or at least the reason I say nothing is because he flies out. But once again, that makes sense for Kamo. But still, once again, it's sort of like an open plot beat. Helping character be a bit of motivation that's set up in Shibuya towards the end of it that kind of just doesn't get followed up on. And obviously you have the Yuji Mama dynamics. Like, to be fair though, I'll give this, and I even mentioned this way back, not way back, but a little bit ago in the waste potential of Kinjaku and Yuji, their whole mom-child dynamic. One of the things is, those characters don't... Well, Kenny cares about Yuji quite clearly. He goes out of his way to do things for Yuji and observes Yuji consistently. Yuji couldn't care less about Kinjaku, and the information that Kinjaku is his mom wouldn't change anything. But once again, that leaves like this open-ended thing. And this one connecting point that all three of these characters have in Big Jaku, as in he's the father of Choso, mother of Yuji, and technically, in a way, like name, inspiration, or basis for Kamo. It's really unfortunate that none of these characters really had to have any proper closure with Kenny. At least in my opinion. I think that could have been interesting. I'm not saying you spent too much time on it, but like, could have done some. Of course, with certain characters coming back the way they did, hey, my Kenny copium has only gotten even stronger. The tank of copium has just gotten even bigger and bigger and bigger. But that aside, they are talking. I have no idea what they're talking about. I went on that whole rant about Jaku and the laws of Choso and stuff like that, because I have no idea what they're talking about. But with that being the case, we see that ultimately... Do I talk about this now? I think I do have to talk. No. We'll still talk a little differently. So essentially, we get a full rundown, or at least what I assume is a full rundown on Shrine or Fuga or whatever you want to call it. This is the full rundown. One thing I do like above all others, though, is that Sukuna, even while like obviously shrinking into like the depths of despair and realizing, whoa, they may have your boy in danger. Like, despite realizing that, he's still smiling. Like, remember, the man is still down 2 arms. Sure, he managed to regenerate the lower and upper arm, the one that was sliced open and the one that didn't take too much damage, but he's still like in a very dangerous spot. At this moment, right here, while he's in the midst of the domain, if the slashes really stopped, Maki could have come out of nowhere and just immediately slashed them arms off. But he's still grinning. He's still having a fantastic time. Once again, I get, in this sense, I get why Gege does not want to show us the Heian era. Because, like, it would just be more of this with characters we have no emotional attachment to. Like, we know what happens. But this does seem like a genuine recreation of the Heian era slaughter of countless sorcerers who threw themselves up against Ryoma and Sukuna in order to sharpen their skills. Of course, these characters aren't throwing themselves up against Sukuna to sharpen their skills. They're throwing them up against Sukuna in a desperate attempt to beat him, but hey, might as well be the same thing. But with that being the case, this flame arrow actually ends up being pretty gargantuan. Like, notably, one of the things I was worried about, because, like, if actually, do I talk about the AoE? If you know what? No, we're gonna leave it be. We gotta talk about it. Hakari, Uraume, what are y'all doing? Like, what are y'all doing? Like, I don't know. I feel like as the weeks outside of the strict Hakari stands, and don't get me wrong, I know y'all exist out there. I've seen you in my comment section, I've seen other comment section, I've seen all over the internet. But like, I feel like I'm like one of the few that actually is still interested in this fight, and that includes Gege not being interested anymore. Because dog, what is at this point? I'm just wondering, is Hakari ever going to make it to Sukuna? At this rate, I don't know. I genuinely hold on. Let me take a sip. Stay hydrated, folks. But no, that's the thing. I genuinely don't know, because the further and further. Ooh, that is an insect die. Sorry. I saw him moving and grooving, and unfortunately, he could not move and groove anymore. Not in my presence. My fault, OG. My fault. But with it being the case, sorry, my brain absolutely blanked. Hakari versus Uraume. The further and further we get, the less and less sense it even makes for a card shot. I'll be completely honest. Like, the big thing that everybody and their mama was banking on, especially when you go all the way back to, I believe, 246. It's that statement from Uraume. That statement that, hey, this guy, his regeneration speed is even better than Satoru Gojo's and Lord Sukuna's. Uraume laid it on the table. If that wasn't the cleanest layup into a jackpot Hakari, Chad walking through a domain expansion like he's anime Maharaga, I don't know what is. I legit don't know what is. I have no clue. And here's the thing. We burnt the domain expansion. That's done. Like, notably, we don't know. Maybe Sukuna has another one in the tank. Maybe he has some more binding vows in his back pocket. Who knows what else he go about? Because once again, I'm not even sure Gege knows. Gege obviously knows. But still, with that being the case, that's one of the big things. Really, really, really hoping for Hakari to come cook with. Did not cook. Let's be honest. As fine as I am with a certain older brother getting fried nice and crispy, I was really hoping for a certain Kinji to come out of nowhere and Hakari all over the place and eat a flame arrow. Literally, who knows? Maybe like straight up eat it, like drop his jaw and then like you just see the explosion detonate on his guts. But as his guts are expanding, he immediately contracts into rock solid. I'm obviously kidding, but still, I was hoping for something like that. But for a cut or anything, like notably, I was more than fine with cutting away from the Sukuna fight. I'm perfectly good with it. Once again, don't get me wrong, I love Sukuna. Cool guy, neat fella. But still, I like Uraume and Hakari, so I'd love to see them actually have battle on panel and not just off screen. But with that being the case, it just seems so bad. And here's the thing. Unironically, this is a 50-50. If you want to push the Uraume agenda, then this is wonderful for you. Because essentially all you gotta be is like, oh, well, Uraume was able to withstand hits from Jackpot Hakari, and Jackpot Hakari say relative to Kotsu, thusly they scale around the same. Like, there are goon arguments. You could be like, oh, bada bing, bada boom, Uraume scales to Hakari, Hakari equals Yuta, Yuta equals Hakari, Uraume equal Hakari, Uraume Yuta. Like, you can definitely go there. But once again, it's just hard to believe. It's kind of like, let's say I tell you, and this is the big thing about this fight. Let's say I tell you I could lift up 1,000 pounds.
Straight lift it, like grab the bar. It's weighted with 500 on each side, and I put that thing up. I tell you I can do that. Would you believe me? Probably not. I don't blame you. Now, what if someone else told you that I could do that? Someone you trust. That's like, hey, yo, Pencil Man, yeah. He kind of built like a bowling ball, but he's a strong little bowling ball. He can lift up 1,000 pounds, straight snatch it over the head. You're gonna start to believe me, right? Maybe, probably not. Because still, you've yet to see it, and that seems like a very outlandish claim that would need some sort of physical evidence to back it up. Okay. So, what if I don't tell you? Not somebody else tells you, but a completely random, powerful individual just knows about me somehow. And is like, oh yeah, that guy, he can live 1,000 pounds. You would want to believe it, but then you naturally come to question, okay, we're in the gym, free rack weights, there's 1,000 pounds on the bar, Pencil Man, lift it. That's what we're at with Hakari right now. We have been promised numerous times that this man is an equal to Yuta Okkotsu. From his original hype up from Yuta, to external materials, to more recent stuff during the Gojo vs. Sukuna fight, these two have been hyped up as equals. But I'm sorry, I'm just not seeing it. Hold on. If this Uraume image is too small for you, don't worry, I have another. Look at them. I want you to look at, there's not a whiff, a hint, a lick, a taste of damage on them. They are spotlight. Like, the only thing that's remotely damaged is their kimono. That's it. That is it. Hakari has been fighting Uraume. Let's be generous and say it's only been 5 minutes. Absolutely it hasn't been. But look at this. Just, like, I'm struggling to formulate words. My brain is actively glitching right now. Like, the fact that Uraume has taken no damage from someone who's supposedly equal to Yuta Okkotsu after they've been fighting for at least 5-10 minutes is absolutely crazy. And I know people are going to be like, well, Pencil Man, haven't you ever heard of that beautiful, wonderful, scrumdiddlyumptious, amazing concept known as RCT? Yeah, I have. But you know what? If you're strong enough, you can override RCT. You're strong in the brain, you can override RCT. You can do, there are a couple different ways you can override RCT. But, RCT don't make you just look this clean after this. The hair's not even ruffled. It's so hard trying to defend Hakari when he just feeds into the pillow punch allegations, feeds into the no damage allegation. Everything Uraume does is of their own will. Hakari has forced them to do nothing in the last, what? It's 260. In the last 24, well, maybe not 24, 23 chapters, 23 or 24 chapters, Uraume's kind of just been chilling with Hakari, he just keeps, he keeps getting hyped, but I just can't see it. Literally, as in I cannot see the damage. I do not know. I don't know him. And that's unfortunate. I can't, it's hard, it's basically impossible to keep defending, bro. All this for literally not even a drop of blood. Thanos would be extra disappointed. He'd be like, dog, you did all that for what? I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, it hurts me so much because, once again, I still see the potential and the hype behind both of these characters. The potential of the battle is, once again, I believe, endless. Especially if Hakari starts pulling out new stuff from his kit. If Uraume starts bringing out RCT to start injecting things with heat energy instead of cold energy. Like, there are levels to what you can get to when it comes to this entire conflict. But we just aren't getting it. And once again, these two should be some of our most powerful combatants in the verse. They should be easy lock top 10. Absolutely. Suguna's Servant, like, it should be. It just should be the case. But it's just, it's not really hitting like that. It's not really hitting like that. And that leads to Hakari looking bad. It leads to Uraume. Shockingly, Uraume stocks have like gone up. I don't know. I haven't seen, ironically enough, despite like, oh my god, I haven't seen really any downplay for Uraume or any like downscale film. It's only people trying to downscale Hakari. And once again, I can't blame them. He just hasn't done anything. That's the big, he hasn't done anything. He hasn't done anything except slightly ruffle their clothes, and that's just not enough. It's not enough for Mr. Strong as Kotsu. I just can't do it. But once again, sorry, I spent way too long talking about a fight that is barely an accent piece in this chapter. But with it being the case, the other major thing that this chapter naturally addresses I said it wrong the first time, right? Like that. The next thing this chapter tends to push on is obviously the connection between the brothers. So naturally, everyone who had the whole idea that Choso would sacrifice himself for Yuji on their bingo card. Bada bing, bada bing. Yeah, I got it. Honestly, I'll admit, I'm mixed. And here's the thing. Once again, this will probably all change with the dialogue and the closure of it. Half of me that's cool with this is like, yes, undeniable, best way for the character to go out. Especially considering the whole idea of the brother complex, him not having faith in his brothers before, so putting all his faith, literally the faith of his literal life, on the line for his last remaining baby brother, of course. And obviously all the other ones are going to live inside Yuji, as Choso mentioned way back when. So like all of his siblings are technically taken care of within the Yuji daycare system. So overall, he's chilling. He's vibing. He's wilding. But how do I put this? But with that being the, even with the setup being there, the whole idea of the human versus the true human, I don't know. Some of Yuki's final words to Choso were, "You now have died as a curse. Live as a human." When Choso was a curse, he was highly protective of his brothers. Didn't really let them do much on their own. All that stuff like that. Or sort of, actually no, kind of the opposite. He kind of did let them go. Because he let them run into Yuji no bar. And that ended up being the devil. But still, Choso ultimately kind of just poofs and undoes what Yuki's sacrifice was for. Remember, Choso was supposed to live a human life. And you can definitely argue he somewhat did with Yuji. But so like that's the thing. The brain is running on fumes right now trying to figure out about this. Does it undermine Yuki? That's my main thing. Does it undermine Yuki? But I guess technically Choso did get to live as a human, metaphorically speaking. It's just that he follows the same decisions as he did when he was living as a curse. Choso would do anything for his brothers, including sacrifice his own life. And here we have Choso doing anything for his brothers and sacrificing his own life. So like, I don't know exactly. The real question is, what do you guys think? Do you guys think we got to see enough of Choso living as a human to justify his rather quick execution relative to his promise to live as a human after he perished as a curse? Or do you think there wasn't enough time given to Choso in order to make that turnaround and that promise he made Yuki feel fulfilled? I'm actually kind of in the latter category. Well, I'm kind of in the latter category where I feel like there wasn't enough time. I feel like there wasn't enough time dedicated to Choso post Yuki to make this feel like ultimately he kept that promise that was made for him by her. It feels a little bit hollow because think about it. When did we really get to see Choso living like a human? I guess with his bonds through Yuji, but he was doing that before he met Yuki and was given that chance anyway. The moment he found out Yuji was his brother, he was locked in, and this is just more of the same. It's not bad. I'm not saying it's awful or anything. I'm not saying this is the worst thing that could ever happen and ooh, blah, blah. But once again, it sort of goes back to that innate JJK pacing problem. Or I guess it's not necessarily a problem. JJK's structured fine with its current pacing, and honestly, I do like it, especially in comparison to some other series from time to time. But Due to that, it makes certain points hit not as hard as they should and starts to lean into sort of the idea of contradiction here. So, while narratively and character-wise this makes sense, it makes perfect sense as the move Choso would make in this moment. It's a nice callback to the idea of Choso doing literally anything and everything for his brothers. It goes into the ideas of what an older brother should be versus what they could be, the willingness to sacrifice oneself instead of risking your younger brothers, which is what a big part of Choso's conflict was earlier on in the narrative, especially when dealing with Yuki and talking about that whole issue and how guilty he felt about how he treated the brothers and the whole idea of the human versus curse-like nature. And this is more an innate human act, the willingness to sacrifice oneself for those you love. Like, I get it. And that's the thing. It's why I'm mixed. It's why I'm 50-50 on it. And it's why I'm trying to struggle and even formulate it. Because half of it makes perfect sense. Half of it, all of this lines up. The idea that Choso sacrifices himself for his brother as a human would do for a human. By humans, for humans, of humans. It makes sense. But, I don't know. I feel like we should have gotten at least a little bit more of them. A little bit more before we deep fry them. You know what I'm saying? Just a little bit. Whether it was a training session, whether it be some just regular living, something to really get to grasp this more human Choso before he got turned into this. Before he got turned into a crispy chicken nugget. But with that being the case, Mr. Crispy Chicken Nugget over here, I will admit, it is kind of ludicrous. Like I know y'all are gonna get on my case with this. It's kind of ludicrous that he got so deep fried, and yet Yuji is seemingly somehow. Let me see if I can find an image of him, mostly unharmed. Because y'all, look at how big this Fuga ended up being. Remember, supposedly, Sukuna's output's in the trash, but this Fuga is even bigger than the one he used on Maharaga way back when. And you mean to tell me Choso's little blood barrier blocked all that for Yuji? I feel like I'm pressing X to doubt on that. I don't know. Like, don't get me wrong. Once again, it feeds perfectly into the characters, and hey, even at its core, I say this all the time, but not often enough. Jujutsu Kaisen, despite being a battle manga, is heavily a character story. So character-wise, it makes sense for this to work. And who knows, it'll probably get explained in the official translation as some sort of like technique or binding vow or something like that. That's why it was able to act as this defensive shield, and maybe Choso like took all the energy that was supposed to spread between him and Yuji in this conflict and like focus it on himself, and that's why he ended up extra burnt in spite of the blood shield, like all that. But this Fuga is huge. This divine flame, this furnace, massive. So the idea that Choso's just able to eat it, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack on the side is a bit ludicrous. Just a teeny tiny bit. But also, since we're talking about the size and scale of the Fuga, is everyone else cooked? Like, remember, admittedly, there weren't too many people on the battlefield by the time of 258. The only people left on the battlefield, or at least supposedly in range of Sukuna's domain and possibly the range of this Fuga, were Maki, Miwa, and Ino. Out of the ones we don't have accounted for, like your Itadoris and your Chosos. But with the scale of this, I'm genuinely wondering, did they make it out okay? At least from the scans I have and the baby 0, like -5 translations I have, there's no mention of these other characters. There's not even a little bit of it. But the scale of this Fuga does imply that they would have been hit. And that's right. Like, don't get me wrong. I think maybe, especially if it's not focused on, or was clearly focused on Yuji and by proxy Choso, like, I think maybe Maki could survive it. Because she's the goat. Like, maybe that's it. That's, like, the only one. It's like, Ino and Miwa, did they really survive this? Or did they just get off screen? I don't know. Did we teleport in and save them? I don't know. Did a certain someone buoy them out of that? I don't know. And that's a teeny tiny bit buku bonkers if you ask me. But hey, I'm down with it. But the question is, and I'll see, it's probably going to be explained as some sort of like binding vow or ritual or exchange, something. Once again, kind of back to the intro, the law of equivalent exchange type beat. It's probably going to be something along those lines. But why is this so big? Like, shouldn't his output be actual dog water right now? Like, bro should be at negative 37 in terms of output. Bro is struggling and struggling and struggling. Like, I don't know. It's not like he hit a black flash or anything. If anything, that domain should have taken even more out of him. But he hits the largest Fuga we've ever seen. Of course, we've only seen 2 Fugas. Well, actually 3. But still, the scale of this is bigger than almost anything we've seen in verse. Like, I'm not sure what the calc's going to be for this, but this looks like a pretty calcable feat. So I don't know. It's kind of crazy, the scale of this. I'm hoping the other characters are all right. Mainly Maki, because I'm biased, but still, I'm hoping all the other characters are all right. But I'm not exactly sure how they're supposed to eat this. This is crazy. But speaking of eating this, speaking of things being crazy, speaking of things I was not expecting, speaking of golly gee willikers, fellas. Yeah, do I? Once again, you know what? Before we get into Mr. Handyman himself, quite literally handyman as in handy, as in he only has one hand, but. With that being the case, let's cover this real quick. I do love the callback. Remember, it was at this very table with Eso and Kechizu that Choso realized that he and Yuji were brothers. This is what was essentially their soul bond, reaching across the bounds of time, space, reality, all that, reaching across all that just to prove that they were connected, they were interlinked, they were brothers. So to see them meet up at this table, and where before Choso sat at the head, but then the brothers were sitting on the side, for Yuji and Choso to be sitting diametrically opposed from each other. On the opposites. Both heads of the table. And both talking to each other on even grounds. It's something. It goes back to like I don't want to call it an issue, but it kind of is. I wish we had more of this. I wish we had more of this property. I wish we got to see them train together. I wish we got to see them share some. I wish we got to see more of this brotherhood. I feel like this isn't hitting me as hard as it should. Like I'm looking at the older brother of our main character, the biological older brother of our main character, get executed and them share a final moment in this transcendental cursed realm, and it hits. But since there's it's minimal enough interaction, it's enough that it does do something. I'm not bursting into tears or anything, but I got like a little heart pang. Like I can feel the agony, the pain, the suffering, the despair. Like I can feel it just deep in my core. It's resting there, but it's just not enough. There's not enough time dedicated to this. Once again, this is a byproduct, because by the time Yuji and Choso realize they're brothers, they have that little interaction at the end of Shibuya. They have that little bit of interaction before Yuta and Naoya have their battle. Then they have a little bit of interaction around the Tengen stuff. Then they do not interact for chapters upon chapters upon chapters upon chapters because of the Culling Game stuff. Choso has the whole battle with Kinjaku. Then we have a little bit of stuff that happened in the time skip that we didn't get to see. And apparently a lot of the training went down with Kamo, since Kamo understood blood manipulation better from a more human... Which is... Now that I think about it, that is so weird. That is actually back... hold on, I didn't even think about it. That my brain just did a weird leap. Why would Kamo be a better teacher? If Yuji and Choso have the exact same biology, why was Kamo ever a better teacher for Yuji? Because they could both do the infinite blood thing. I don't know. That's kind of weird now I think. I guess maybe just Kamo's a better teacher. Like maybe Choso just can't. Maybe he's like on a Gojo type beat where he just can't teach to save his life. I guess I'll go with something like that. I guess. So we'll go with that just to save my suspension of disbelief. But with it being the case, that's it. That's it. There's so little, and it's so far. It's so spread out. It's so widely spread too, that I feel like once again that impact I should be feeling. And the amount of time that was dedicated to this just isn't there. It's a lot of implication. And it's a lot of... It isn't... Shockingly enough, I mean, it depends on what side of the JK family you're on. My Hero Academia... Well, I know it seems like a completely random tangent, but hear me out. My Hero Academia has not a problem, because it's not Hori's fault. It's entirely separate from the series. But fanon and canon characterization and experiences and interconnection tend to blend a lot in MHA, to where certain attributes of fanon variations of the characters will be attributed to canon interpretations of the characters, even if there's nothing in canon to support it, or very minimal stuff in canon to support it. This leads to certain characters like Dabi, like Toga, like Shigaraki, like a bunch of different characters to get a lot better characterization, but that's solely through fanon stuff. And that's how I feel about the Yuji and Choso dynamic. Fanon found out these two were brothers and took it through the moon. Wrote countless comics, countless fanfics, countless all this stuff about their dynamic and protection and all the stuff like that, all the fan art, all the different AUs, all that wonderful, beautiful. The narrative barely supports it though. At least in my, maybe it's just enough, and I can see it being just enough for many. I know people were in the trenches over this, and I know a lot of people probably shed a tear over seeing these two have their final conversation over the family picnic tree. But I don't know. I feel like it's just not enough. Like, can we just end his life? No. It's not enough. Go into his house. Take out his ramen packs. Take out all the seasoning. Flush it down the toilet. He don't deserve flavor. Can we just... No. It's not enough. That's how I feel. It's not... It would just take a little... Here's the thing. There's enough of this in comparison to the whole like Choso living as a human thing, which I think is just generally underexplored, and you would need to just dedicate more time to Choso. You kind of slaughter slaughter two birds with one stone here, where you could give Choso more time. You could allow him to do more, in a sense, and allow him to be more flexible and free with Yuji, and get that more human characterization and improve the Yuji and Choso dynamic. I don't know, I feel, and here's the thing, right? I focus so heavily on this because we go back to the law of clothing exchange that I mentioned at the way start of this video. Yo, Yuji thanks him for what he did, and then immediately moves on to Todo. Cause yeah, like that's the other big reveal of this chapter. Todo's here. That's it. Because they don't really have much of a dynamic. There's not really much time to spend. Like, notably, we know Gege's willing to give characters, like, whole chapter enders, whole denouements, if you will. When they're, like, big, bad, and important, the character dynamic is made. Like, we're willing to end chapters on stuff like that. Like, when we're really laying it down. But, ultimately, Choso's just a piece. Piece of Yuji. Another pawn to be thrown away for his development. He's an enemy. He's a Nobara. He's not really a Mega Man in a way. Like, there just isn't enough time dedicated to the character that we can really spend too much time on it. So we just got to keep moving forward. We got to keep progressing. And once again, it makes sense in narrative. And that's the thing I keep going back to, right? The idea that I want more, so there's more weight. But the narrative has, legally speaking, it's kind of like, how do I put this without sounding weird? Like, it's paid off. Like say the narrative has a debt, right? The narrative has paid off its debt to the penny. Like the legitimately I couldn't charge it with anything else. It did that. It gave us the Choso sacrifice. It gave us the full culmination of the human turnaround. It gave us the brotherly bond. It gave us the brotherly wrap-up conversation. It gave us everything. And it paid every last penny of its debt. But that interest wasn't paid off. Let's go with that. That interest wasn't there. Where there wasn't really enough of that extra for me to really feel it. Like, I feel like I should be feeling it. This comes from a guy who has heavy fandom exposure, but I think it's because since I reread JJK a lot, especially sections of it, and I know the plot decently well. Once again, I'm not a JJK lore master, but I do know enough about it. Like, I know well enough to distinct fanon from canon, and there's just not enough of these two characters, which leads this moment to feel slightly hollow, which is unfortunate. I feel like this is a moment that should have had me like, like bawling my eyes out. But I really ain't do that for real, for real. But of course, enough talk about Choso and Yuji and that connection. We gotta move on to the best of friendo, the other big brother. I do like this little panel though of Yuji and Choso running away, Yuji running into the foreground, running farther into the future, Choso being left behind. That's what this whole little conversation is apparently about. The idea that one day Yuji will leave Choso behind, and he'll do the older brother thing of, you know, leading the younger brother into the future. He did that, so Yuji running off is ultimately appropriate. I do. Once again, I like the parallel. It's there. Once again, the debt's paid, but it just ain't enough. It's not enough. You don't deserve flavor. You know what I'm talking about? But let's see. The other major thing, Todo's back. Now, positives first. Todo's back. Hallelujah. I could have sworn gay forgot about you. For reference, we have not seen Todo since the Mahito fight. It's been well over 100 chapters. Like, the Mahito fight ends around the 130s. This is 259. It's been years since Todo even got a name drop. So I'm more than happy to have broski back. You know I'm happy to have my girl back. My girl. I love it. Obviously, I'm interested to see how he coordinates with Yuji. I'm interested to see if he's gonna, like, depending on whether or not, like, the big question how interesting Todo will be is, once again, based on what this whole kind of fight has been based around. What is he going to do? What is he going? That's the big thing about this. What is he going to bring to the battle now? He's burned through Fuga. He's burned through that domain. He's burned through. So the real question: what is he going to do now? Because technically, like, I can smell the choreography. The choreography, it has quite the pungent and rich aroma, if you will. Like, I can smell it. That smelly smell. Like, I can smell the choreography if he just turns into a slash merchant again. Like, Todo legit starts switching with the dismantles as they happen. If someone's getting cleaved, he, like, swaps their body out with something, or, like, swaps something out with a rock. Like, I can see it. But I'm really hoping for something fresh, fancy, and new from the king. Once again, maybe it is. Maybe we just saw the full kitchen, the flame that lights the oven and the knives that chop up the meal. But what about the fan that, you know, if you know, like, the microwave fan that comes over to cool things down? What about the gasoline or something along the lines? What burns or provides fuel for the fire? What about I feel like there's still depths that you can go to with Sukuna, and that would make the choreography even better. Get some more, like, chaotic battlefield control in there. Especially since we went out of our way to sort of reduce the battlefield back to, you know, the flat wasteland thing by having Sukuna just, you know, level the entire area with that massive Fuga. Like, I feel like we're going to need to get that creative choreography back. And I do want it. Todo does facilitate a lot of that. A lot of my favorite fights in the series are based around Todo because of how chaotic and creative he makes it. But also, a lot of that comes down to the fact that Todo fights good environmental abusers and people who can make a battlefield more interesting based on their abilities alone. Think of Todo's two biggest fights, Hanami and Mahito. Both of them were battlefield spammers. Both of them would if they would put a whole bunch of stuff on screen, you kind of just had to deal with it. Like, I'm thinking of, Dragon Ball doesn't, well, Super Baby 2 from Dragon Ball FighterZ, your Jackos from Guilty Gear, or Foss, either one. Like, there are a couple characters out there that just put stuff on the screen. You kind of just had to figure out how to deal with it. Mahito and Hanami could do that. And that allowed for Todo and Yuji to have crazy choreography, in spite of just both being punch and kick merchants. But now that Yuji has evolved beyond traditional punch and kick merchant to punch, kick, and shoot merchant, and Todo is only back with one hand in Ultra Boogie Woogie, I'm interested to see what kind of chaotic next level Boogaloo they get up to, but I'm hoping Sukuna facilitates it through more techniques. Cleave and Dismantle is cool. I'm down with it. But now I want to see it in Yuji's hands, and Yuji's hands alone, low-key. I want to see Sukuna start whipping out different things. Let's go crazy with it. Because clearly we're in a phase where Gay is kind of just like, whatever happens. We're bringing back anybody and everybody. If there's a chance they may be alive, you may just see them again. So I'll admit, this is kind of what was a door I was so confident was closed. A door that I would have, if I had money, I would have put it on. A door that I thought was closed. Nobara coming back, not impossible now. Really, her having some sort of impact, not impossible. Todo came back after his technique was supposedly dead, and now apparently he's back. That's it. That's it. The door is open on some Kingdom Hearts type beat. But speaking on some Kingdom Hearts type beat, Todo coming back. The mixed feelings about this. Where was he? I know. Once again, this will come clear once the translations are out, and like I have a better understanding. I know there was something about like the nature of his new boogie woogie, and he was doing something with the crows, but like you should have had a facilitator like Todo infinitely earlier. He should have been there from around start. Like even if, like once again, it'll all come down to how his new boogie woogie works and how quickly he's able to apply it, but. There was so many scenarios where Todo could have helped. His switching ability is beautiful for someone, a battlefield spammer like Sukuna. His switching ability is perfect. He could literally throw Sukuna into his own slashes, or heck, for this very scenario, knock Sukuna into his own fire arrow. Like there were things that he could have done that it makes me wonder why save him to this point. I get narratively saving him to this point. Once again, separating myself from the internal logic of the narrative. I get that ultimately it is cooler on a reader week-by-week experience to finally have Todo back after over 100 chapters and multiple years of his absence to the point where he doesn't even get a name drop. Like, I get that. But, like, in universe, what was he doing? Was he secretly facilitating things the whole time? Was he helping Uiui? I don't know. That's something that I won't go too heavy into the critique on. I will wait until the translations drop. I'll wait on that because that'll end up determining it. If he was just sitting around the entire time, that's a little bit wacky. That's a little bit goofy. It's kind of the Miguel thing, but Miguel very specifically had criteria before he would intervene. You could argue Miguel joining early would make the whole battle easier because he'd just be debuffing Sukuna. Absolutely. But I can give it a pass. Yuta, he had to fight Kinjaku. I can give it a pass. Maki not going for the head. They want to save Megumi. I can give it a pass. But Todo not being there, I don't know. That's something that's going to have to be clarified with translations and stuff like that. For Todo scaling to this Sukuna at all, once again, the only reason I'm so hesitant about this is because of the scale of this Fuga. Like, I'm not sure what that means for his output. Is it back? Is it not back? Is this what he looks like? What, on super low output? Was it just the Fuga that was at maximum output and he himself is still at regular output? Did he put binding vows on it? Like, what is the context? Because one of the biggest reasons why everyone and their mama, myself included, were hesitant with bringing Todo back is that ultimately he should not scale. He shouldn't. But at the same time, I guess if LaRue could scale, why not Todo? If Ino could scale, why not Todo? So we're in that point where we're kind of confident that Sukuda's weak enough that anyone can come in and do anything, but at the same time we need to remember that Sukuda's strong enough that he could wipe them all out at any instant. It's the catch-22 that we kind of been in for the past fight. Like, I can't even say past culture. No, the past fight. Like, the whole Sukuda Gauntlet has kind of been the fact where we need to toe the ever-delicate line of Sukuda's more than powerful enough to one-shot everybody here. But at the same time, he's not going to because we need a story to happen. So, I don't know. I'm interested. Overall, the chapter's pure positives, though. Like, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I did have some of my complaints about Hakari versus Uraume not being cut to. I do have some of my complaints with Choso not getting enough screen time, in my opinion, in order to justify this arc and final moment from him. I do have some confusion and some interest about Todo and his involvement or lack of involvement so far, what he's going to do from here on out. And obviously, you know I do have my glaze for the King of Curses Ryo and Sukuna and his massive flaming arrow. But all that being the case, you know the chapter's still worthy. Like, once again, this is me, like, nitpicking with less context. Translations are more than likely to change my opinion. Can't wait for those to come out. And you know, it'll be a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time. But if you made it all the way to the end of this chunka-dunka of a video, please do me a favor and leave Burning Brother leave Burning Brother in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon below where you can support me for as low as $1 Del Monte, things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You can now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks will include the live reaction to this very chapter, ad-free variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 patron or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, I have a link to my Ko-Fi down below where you can drop a $5 donation for a nice little short video or a $25 donation for a full-length video of whatever you choose. But now, today is what you're watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dagger the Pencil, writing off.
I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Wakana Plays, Greyhound, Akids Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, King Sukuna, NMA, Real Rare, and Paris Arnold. I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons, Super Gamer Q, Steron, Sean, Sammy, Oexian, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin, Encarnacion, Josh Brown, and Igneel. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $7 member, Autumn Mornings Lazo. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 members, Jay Warrior and Robbie Uchiha. And I'd like to give a big ol' thank you to our $10 patrons, Panda Goat, Joaquin Munoz, and Idem Okam. I'd like to give another gargantuan thank you to our $20 patron, Calvin Elder.